For 75 years, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has generated more diplomatic energy and more international resolutions than any other dispute on Earth. Yet after decades of signed treaties and high-profile handshakes, a lasting resolution remains elusive. In the 1990s, diplomats addressed the immediate symptoms of the conflict by building frameworks for local self-governance, while intentionally deferring the primary points of contention, territory, refugees, and Jerusalem, to a later phase known as final status negotiations. These final status talks have collapsed in every session they have been attempted. To see why, we must look past the political rhetoric to the specific physical requirements that define a functioning country. Every sovereign nation-state rests on four universal pillars: contiguous territory, a functioning capital, a defined population, and a monopoly on security. The peace process has stalled because granting these four specific pillars of statehood to a new Palestinian state requires dismantling the existing pillars that support the State of Israel. A viable, independent state requires contiguous, connected borders to function economically. The territories designated for a future Palestinian state, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, are separated by miles of Israeli land. A functional state requires a secure physical corridor connecting these regions into a unified national geography. The geography of the West Bank contains a network of Israeli settlements built over the last several decades. Approximately 700,000 Israeli civilians now live within the specific territory designated for this future Palestinian state. Establishing an unbroken Palestinian territory would require an Israeli government to forcibly evict hundreds of thousands of its own citizens, a move that carries extreme domestic political costs. Beyond borders, a nation requires a capital. Both Israelis and Palestinians claim Jerusalem as their absolute, eternal center of government. The religious and historic core of both Jewish and Palestinian identity occupies the same few square miles of stone. The holiest site in Judaism and the third holiest site in Islam share the architecture of a single hillside, making the space functionally indivisible. Drawing a physical map for two states remains gridlocked because the physical requirements of one side's geography create a direct fracture in the other's. A state's identity is also defined by the makeup of its population. During the 1948 war, approximately 700,000 Palestinians fled or were expelled from their homes. Today, their descendants number between 5 and 6 million people, and they claim a fundamental right to return to lands lost 3 generations ago. For Israel, absorbing millions of Palestinians would eliminate the Jewish demographic majority that serves as the foundation of the state. Sovereignty also requires a monopoly on force, the ability to maintain an independent military for defense. Following the suicide bombings of the Second Intifada and the casualties of the October 7th attacks, Israel demands absolute security control over neighboring territories to prevent breaches of its border. These security requirements are incompatible with Palestinian independence. A demilitarized state under permanent Israeli monitoring lacks the basic authority required of a sovereign nation. This creates a terminal paradox. A fully armed Palestine is viewed as an unacceptable risk to Israel, but a disarmed Palestine is a subjugated entity. Solving the demographic and security pillars would require one side to voluntarily accept its own numeric or military vulnerability, an action no nation willingly takes. In 30 years of negotiations, no formula has successfully resolved all 4 of these pillars simultaneously. Diplomatic progress is measured by the gap between the Palestinian floor, minimum demands for a state, and the Israeli ceiling, maximum concessions Israel can offer. The Israeli ceiling cannot reach the Palestinian floor without compromising the security or demographic character that allows Israel to exist. This deadlock persists because core requirements for one nation's survival create direct threats to the other. The conflict is hard-coded into the physical and social structures of how both societies operate. Any future peace resolution demands compromises on what both peoples consider core to their national identities. Until those conditions exist, understanding these 4 unbridgeable gaps is the only place to start.